Okay, welcome. First of all, I come bearing gifts. So because this is a participatory session, everybody who's here will get a t-shirt. The t-shirt asks the question, which at the end of my speech, I think we're still asking, you know, how open are we? How open are our institutions? The reason I'm going to give you this t-shirt is because in the past year, we became a special purpose teaching university. And although the URL still works, we really don't want to publish Cap College too much anymore. So I'm going to give away, I've got a bag full of t-shirts. So you'll all get a t-shirt, and on the front, you know, it looks really nice. It's only the messages on the back.
You sure you don't want that for the wedding?
No. Yeah, I had to beg, borrow, and steal a lot to be able to get today off of my vacation because there's a lot to get done in the receptions at home. Okay, so first I'm going to flip quickly here to the end. That's the end, because that's where we are today. We have a site up. It is got courses that cover, a wide range. Gotta watch that mouse. A wide range of areas. Probably can't read it back there. This is a little too close, and the cord's not any longer. Anthropology, art history, some business courses, chemistry, computing science, English, geography, math, statistics, philosophy, and studio art. So we got quite a range. There's only 17 courses up there. Some of them aren't what you would actually call courses. We call them a course because what we loved about the Open Courseware Consortium was there was no definition of course. You made your own definition. It was just a template of how to put it up. And so there's actually one course in there that our computer science department made and put up because they thought it would be good to share with students, called Breadth Topics in Computing Science. And all it is a collection of topics they thought were useful to students. So introductions to abstraction, software, what is the software life cycle, just some background breadth stuff. And they said, we'll put it there and we'll share it and anybody can use it. And so it's up there like that.
So what is it licensed under?
It's all licensed under Creative Commons.
And by attribution or attribution share alike?
Attribution.
No non-commercial?
And no non-commercial.
Before it was non-commercial.
Right. Yeah, non-commercial, share alike attribution. Okay. Pretty cool.
It doesn't have the special BC Creative Commons license.
No. You'll see in my presentation you'll see me. I'll make a brief mention of that poor second cousin choice. Okay, so this just gives you a little bit. This is where we got to. This is where we are today. So how did we get here? And when Mary and I were talking, we found out that we had common roots. We both have been taking courses in the MET program. We both took a course on e-business learning. I think we both had contact with Dave Porter, who's the head of BC campus. And as a result, with that type of input, we both ended up exploring at our institutions things that have resulted in them going down some OER route. I took a course there, got introduced to the Open Courseware Consortium. It was consistent with my values that I've always practiced, and so I said, hey, this is good. I think I'll do a paper that should be relatively easy and interesting for me. I'll do a paper on why Capilano should join the Open Courseware Consortium. Contact Stephen Carson, who most of you probably know. He was first president of the board, I think still the president of the board, the board chair for the Open Courseware Consortium, and head of MIT, not head of, but a key player in MIT's project for Open Courseware. And he sent me immediately some information on their statistics because they studied greatly what was happening with Open Courseware in their institution and found out all of the potentials that they didn't expect. Because they thought that what had happened is it would go out there to be used mainly by faculty. And what they found was faculty were less than a third of the users. Right? Most of you probably know the stats. 71% of students use it, 42% of their alumni used it. This was their 2006 stats. 67% of students had a positive experience. It helped them choose what courses they were going to take in the institution. All of these other things that they hadn't anticipated that just happened by being open. most of us have experienced that. Anyways, we're a small institution. We're in the North Shore of Vancouver. If you get a chance to come over and visit our campus, it's a beautiful campus. Please come. We service about 14,000 students. 7 of those are through continuing education. 7 of those are enrolled in credit courses. But you can walk into the president's office anytime. Probably doesn't hurt that you're the president of the faculty association. But anyways, you can walk into the president's office at any time. And went into Greg Lee and I said, just after vacation, and I said, so I did this paper over the summer, and I think we should join the Open Courseware Consortium. Oh, he looked at the quick presentation and said, okay, well, idea sounds good. Why don't you talk to the dean? So I went and talked to Dean Penny Lacuter, and Penny says, oh, John, that's a fabulous idea. She has an accent I can't mimic. And that was Tuesday, and Friday we joined. So, you know, smaller institutions sometimes can be a little fleeter of foot. The trouble is, joining that quickly doesn't necessarily mean there's any huge commitment of resources and everything else behind it, right? It just means, okay, we're willing to throw our hats in with you, and if you're willing to be a champion and do some work and make this thing happen, we'll help you along the way. Which means I've just about given to you all of the key points of my speech. So what I've done here is try to organize this presentation on the topics that were given to us for what should happen on a startup camp. So the little italicized sections up here at the top were what was given to us. And then what I did was try and put answers in where I could, and the odd question I left out. So who are the key people? Well, I think it does help to have someone in the executive team, and at our institution, the president, the vice presidents, and the deans are all members of the executive. And so it does help to have a champion. And in this case, it was Dr. Penny Lacuter. She came from faculty. She was a chemistry teacher, wrote a book called Napoleon's Buttons. You might want to, it's a funny look at why chemistry has really affected lives of the world. But anyways, she was our executive champion. She really wanted this to happen. And that was one of the key things you needed. You also needed to tie it into the mission of your institution. So when I did the presentation, I was able to tie it into 4 of our direct mission statements. So it enhanced, in my opinion, what I told was the learning and teaching experiences. It enhanced institutional reputation. It would aid with student retention. It gets used by students, faculty, alumni in the world, and it leverages existing resources. Yes?
Could you please address the student retention matter? I'm just playing devil's advocate here, because some people who you sort of talk to OCW about are like, well, I mean, why would they come to the institution if they can get the courseware for free?
Well, you know, one of the early discussions I had in my understanding of why MIT went the way it did was that in the early time, MIT said, we want a presence on the web, faculty, go find it. MIT studied it and came back to the president and said, there's nothing we can do with the web. What the service we're offering, it's best done face-to-face. He said, that's not acceptable. We're MIT, we need a presence. Go come up with a different solution. And they said, well then fine, we'll give it away because it can't hurt us. Right? And I think that's the same here. And in the last presentation I was just at, Kurt Manson, who's our moderator, was talking about the advantage of students to do review, to access and refresh, to look ahead if they want to decide whether or not they're going to go into a course. And that was all the evidence that if you go through the pages of MIT's, how are students using this? They don't just use it to look at the exams before midterms, although that's one of their peak periods. You know, they use it for all of those other reasons. And so it's for that. Also, it puts the student at the center. You're saying it's not about me, it's about your learning, and here's all the tools and the resources and the way we're going to help you with it. And so as soon as you put someone at the center of something, they know about it.
Isn't what MIT is really selling at this point is its reputation as an institution? In other words, the last time I applied for a job, they didn't ask what I read on the internet. They wanted to see where I had gotten credentials from officially. And so in order to get the official credentials, I still have to pay an institution to graduate from their program.
And
so it isn't the information I'm paying for.
Do you work in academics?
Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't the information I'm paying for, it's the paper that says I have officially passed through a program.
Right. And that's true from an academic point of view, which I submit as a pretty isolated point of view of the world. From me as a business instructor that's been involved in the business community for a lot of time, it's a degree from just an accredited institution that recognizes you have the horsepower. That gets you in the door, and then it's what happens. It's not the particular institution, except
Right,
in
but
some...
you still have to pay for that, is what I'm saying.
Oh.
I'm not saying specifically to MIT, that was just an example.
Okay.
I'm saying you still have to pay for that official credential that says you are qualified to do X, Y, and Z.
That's right, and that's why the next session I'm going to go to is the peer-to-peer one by Philip Schmidt, this first one this afternoon, because that's the idea that eventually people can, I think, get open degrees through peer-to-peer and open things. I think that's one of the ways this will unfold. Eventually, I believe, universities were created and were a coming together and a sharing of minds and society's resources to expand the body of knowledge and to make people as a whole better off. That's my belief of why universities started and blossomed. What they've allowed to happen because of funding and a focus on IT is they've turned that paradigm upside down. So they're no longer expanding the body of knowledge for the betterment of society. They're expanding the body of knowledge so they can get something they can patent and sell and help themselves. And I think open education resources turns the paradigm back to what it was historically. So rather than being the death knell of universities, I think it's the rebirth of what they are in developing the true academy. That's just my argument and my personal point of view. So, what were the key pieces needed to address? Well, you needed some champions, you needed a faculty. You also, it was very helpful to have very early on some external support and validation. So, David Porter, who happened to be one of the instructors, and Paul Stacey's here from BC Campus. Very early on, BC Campus said, well, we can give you a very small, it was $10,000 research grant to help you move this project along. And they did, and on the home page at the bottom, you'll notice there was BC Campus logo and that type of thing. And so that was very useful as well. It wasn't just us in our own minds thinking about what we're doing. It will also help to have a goal. Eventually we said, okay, we want to have the site up by this date with that number of courses recognized. And what was the key part was the fact that OpenCourseware was going to help. One of the few ways we as a small institution could make a contribution to the movement was my personal skills in process and contract writing and constitution development and that type of things. So I've sat on some committees and let my skills in that way. And therefore, I was aware that the institution was about to become a formal society and have voting and all those types of things. And we decided we wanted to be able to vote, and so we had to have our 10 courses up and running and ready to go, and we did it in time. It was an artificial type goal, but it worked. Technology choices, we took the easy way out. We went to EduCommons. We found that it worked for us. It meant that we didn't have to put a whole bunch of money into developing our own type of sources or some other type of thing. We could use this off the shelf and plug in. And so that's what we've done. How does it reform an institution? Well, it introduces that new paradigm I was talking about, at least from my point of view. And by introducing that, it gives it a place to grow and to be seen. So, you know, we hand out the t-shirts to the people, the faculty that have developed the courses. What's happened and what are some of the courses that or choices Capilano has made? Well, it used EduCommons. It's adopted Moodle in place of WebCT. It promotes online and blended credit courses. One of its strategic goals is to get more blended courses up. Brian Lamb came and did the first speech in the Dr. Bill Gibson series. He was the previous vice president of academics of the institution, retired a couple of years ago, and so there was a lecture series created in honor of his work. And Brian came and talked to us about openness, and there were over 100 faculty. Well, so, well, actually, I do love 100. So this was a well-attended meeting, and a lot of buzz happening in the institution around what's happening with openness and where this could lead.
Have you found that Moodle has fostered any openness in the system, or is it just another technology choice for an element?
I think what's happening, and it's incremental, right? Because most of the faculty that come through have come through IP is important and let's protect it. They're willing to share often within their group, but there's all those little barriers that you have sometimes in journal institutions. What happens though with Moodle is the technology choice and the fact that all students are expecting instructors to have websites. One of the things we did in the last year that actually almost made that imperative was our court timetable changed at the institution from 2 2-hour blocks to 2 1.5-hour blocks. Our contract requires a 4th hour still to be delivered, and that was to be delivered in non-scheduled times and ways, and most did that through office hours and electronic office hours and through their Moodle websites with additional readings and works that students could do there. And so what that did is create a transparency about the quality of support individual instructors had in their courses. That transparency creates more openness because people now got to start talking because the students talk to each other. So it's there's a pull method and there's a push method, and both are happening at once.
So even though the Moodles are individual silos for individual classes, there's still, you're finding bleed out?
Yeah, you find bleed out. The other thing is too, that everything's now electronic. It's much easier to move it over to do it into OER. The problem is then cleaning it from an IP point of view. And I'll tell you how we did that, at least with the first 17 we've got. Okay. Was there another thing? So how did we deal with intellectual property? Because we couldn't use the MIT model. We couldn't get a whole bunch of people that would sit and help clear it and sanitize it. We were basically working with the instructors and some staff time that was an adjunct to their job, and they did fabulous work. But the way we did it, because we didn't have a lot of resources, was we said, let's go in the institution, and I forgot to mention that on the first slide, should have. Way back here, one of the keys was this 25 colleagues. Like before I went to the president, because I wrote this paper, then I thought, I wonder if that was just Wilson's musings. Better go talk to some people. So I went and talked to a number of my colleagues in a number of the departments and said, hey, what do you think of this idea? Well, 25 indicated they would be willing to post some stuff. So with that validation, I then went forward, and what we took out of that was we got a small group together to do the first original 10 courses that were the dedicated people that just in principle had already bought in to the open education type movement and the values that it has. And so they went together to share their courses and put them up. It was easier to put them up. They helped clean their own IPs, problems, and everything else, and that's how we did it. So I call that just the get up stage, stage 1. And that's sort of where we plateaued at the moment, because I was on a paid educational leave for a year. It allowed me to learn these materials, help get this up. And the other co-champion is Chris Gratham. And Chris Gratham, who is the manager of the EdTech Resource Center at Capilano U, is also a faculty member, and he's now doing his PhD. And so both of he and I have been away from the institution for a year. Then I got elected faculty association president, which eats up humongous amounts of my time. And so neither of the champions have been around to actually champion it for the last year. So Paul keeps thinking, when's Capilano going to send in another request for some grant? But we've got some great things out here they could do. And we just haven't had a chance to turn our minds to it. So we've plateaued at that state. And now, it's sort of where do we go next? So what were some of the lessons that we learned? Well, you need to get some buy-in from some key people at the beginning, particularly the executive. These are the pain points. Well, getting the buy-in initially, having the guts to go out and risk by asking your colleagues, hey, would you do this? Because it's a little out of the box, or at least it was 3 years ago. Transitioning from stage to stage. So how do we go to the next level? We got 17 courses up. We will come back as champions. Do we continue the small group and or do we try and lever the institution? We've also had a huge turnover in our executive. The president is going to be retiring at the end of July. So there's a number of things happening in the institution. But I think some of those are promising. We're looking at learning commons. There's a whole more shift in the administration to look at open. Brian Lamb's speech talked about how if you actually adopted open in total, you would probably save money and channel resources in a different way. So there's a whole bunch of buzz happening, which is good. Are there ways to avoid these? No. It's like a kid growing up. You're going to go through these phases. There's going to be some pain. Get used to it and get over it. You will live. How can you OER projects draw on partner with allied movements such as the Free Culture Movement? Yes, I think we can help foster a greater openness that will allow open content to be more easily accessed and used. One of the problems with an EduCommons site and that type of thing is it's not so easy just to go in and grab the stuff and use it and download it. I think that there have to be learning objects that are much more easily accessible to help actually make the movement take off. This was one of the slides from my presentation, but it had on it something that I thought was an important point. This was the original presentation I did as part of the course. And this is the idea that Fishy and Luderbeck had said in 2001, which was basically, you get more if you give it away. For me, it was like that kid's song. Love is not until you give it away. Give it away. Give it away. I'm not a terrible singer, but you got the idea, right? And I think this is the same type of thing. You give it away, it's going to come back. So we've got 17 courses up now. Right representation, I showed you that already at the beginning. Something that I thought was encouraging was OCW was updating, you would have all got the email probably, updating a request to Hewlett-Packard for some funding, and they wanted to know what were the stats. And so back in June, everybody was supposed to send in their stats. Chris was away, I was away. The fellow could only go to Google Stats and get 1 month's worth and sent those off. And he sent them to me, and I looked at them over the vacation. And so this was the Google Stats for May the 23rd to June the 22nd, 2009. This is during a period where we've effectively done nothing for a year. Okay? And this, when I looked at it in preparing for this speech, said to me, John, you got to get back involved and make sure this happens because there's this huge thirst out there. Considering we have only 17 courses, the way I look at it, we've got 3,607 different visitors. 83% of them are new visits. We should be capturing new visitors. We want to have them more. However, when you look at that there was 4,200 visits, that means 600 of those came back more than once to the site. And this is for only 17 courses and for something that hasn't changed and been added to or done anything in a year. So for me, that was good news. That showed there is a tremendous demand and a willingness to share and use things out there. And so I'm going to go back with some renewed energy to help make this happen. So that sort of concludes my prepared remarks. Yep.
I think that the sharing and growing would only come from not fragmenting the licenses, because the licensing compatibility alone, the Creative Commons in itself has 16 derivatives, and also associating a non-commercial to it. I mean, because, for example, I come from another OER organization, and we do CC by SA. We do not have the clause of non-commercial. So there is no way for us to mix and match our contents in order to grow.
Yep, that's a factual statement. Personally, I wouldn't put non-commercial on mine.
Okay. Whereas your organization chose to.
But right, the default for most faculty is that they would like non-commercial. Myself, as soon as I say share alike and attribute, I don't care if they do it inside a book, they charge someone money. They still have to share alike and they still have to attribute, and so I don't have a problem with that.
So as a response, actually, at the University of Michigan, we give our faculty the choice. So when they give permission to OER their course, we provide a set of CC license variants, and we're actually trying to even get them to do CC null. So your coolness is how unrestrictive it is. So we're trying to say, if you want to be really cool, you go with CC null. You know, that's the coolest of all possible licenses.
That's where they go.
So yeah, there was a proteomics data project where they actually, the first use of CC null was a Michigan proteomics data project. And they think they're very cool. I don't know if everybody else is.
I'm cool. Do you want to ask Mark before I start?
Actually, I had two questions. One was, you talked mostly about how you're sharing, how Capilano is sharing its resources. Do you have any sense of how your faculty are using other resources, open resources from other sources?
You know, I'm sorry I don't. Dr. Aurora Lee from our English department is speaking later in the conference on Friday. She may have a better sense. I just haven't had much chance in the last year to actually talk to the people about that aspect. One of the things I hope to do this coming year.
Okay, and the other question is, and maybe you're going to talk about this at the end, is do you have any thoughts about how you go to the next stage? Get to the next stage?
We're kind of hoping you'd tell us that.
Yeah. For me, I think it's going to have to be about more buy-in in the institution saying, here is a strategic advantage. For many of the reasons that Kurt were mentioning, which is why I attended his session this morning, there's lots of reasons you can have them buy in, lots that match with the mission. We have a new vice president of student services that's come out that's strongly in favor of learning commons and open idea. And he's also responsible for IT and computers, the resource center. And so I'm holding optimism, but it's really about getting key buy-in from key players.
Hi. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our project, which is at its very beginning stages. We are looking, actually, when you said we're talking about your stats, I think half of those were me, looking at other people's sites. So I work at Royal Roads University, which is a special purpose university. We were a military college for a number of years. We are now an applied university exclusively. Our student population is mostly people who are in the workplace. So we do a number of graduate degrees, a few undergrad, but yeah, so interesting place to work. So I'm going to talk about why we decided to go ahead and do this, what we're sharing, and how we think we're going to do it, because as I said, we're just at the very beginning stages of the project. We talked about this yesterday, and John mentioned it, that the project for me started as a project for a course. I didn't write a paper, I did a little YouTube video that was sort of the walking person in front of the camera, Rick Mercer style. And it was really interesting to do it in that style and think about what I was creating that would be shared for other people to learn about what I was doing and kind of be living that experience. So in any case, I'm glad the course is over. It was very interesting. So we are going to be sharing some open source code that we developed for Moodle, some resources that are some Moodle training resources as well as multimedia resources that we've created. We are going to be doing that for a variety of reasons. We have, in addition to Moodle, we are running most of our software in LAMP environments. We're also running Drupal, so we feel like we've benefited a lot from that movement, and we want to contribute back to it. We think our resources, particularly the Moodle ones, will be of value to people because they're packaged in a way that someone else who was using Moodle would be able to import them fairly easily and use them. They're quite generic as well, so useful in that way. On the more business or evil corporate giant side of things, we think that it is a marketing tool. The conversation about credentialing, et cetera, is interesting to us. While I agree that there is this discussion about what happens if someone just comes and looks at our content and they think they've learned it all and they don't want to pay for education at our university, we think that the larger part of what happens when you come to university isn't about the credential or reading the content. It's about the interaction with the faculty member, the other students in the course, and what happens during that process and the connections that are created. You can't match that if you're just reading the content. The courses we'll be sharing are all online courses, so essentially we're just taking the package that we put up in Moodle now and putting it out for free. But you won't be having a discussion forum with other students in your course about a reading you've had that will increase your learning about it. You won't be getting the context from a faculty member about the topic. Our instructors are largely, as John is, practitioners in their area, so they're experienced, and you won't get that experience if you don't pay to come and take the course. So we think that's going to be helpful for us, and we also think that it could be valuable from a faculty recruitment perspective as well. People will see what our university is about, what our learning model is through the courses. They'll also see in the training materials the kind of support that they'll get working at our university, so we think it will be valuable for that perspective as well. So as I said, we've got a bunch of instructional multimedia. Because we've been doing online courses for a number of years, we have lots of stuff that we've been storing away for years and repurposing and things like that that we think will be of value to people. The Moodle training resources, our Moodle code, as well as our courses. We, in addition to sharing the course content, plan to share the pedagogy behind the courses. So why was this course developed the way it was? Why did we put in this particular type of assignment for this content? So we'll be working with the faculty members who designed the courses to garner that and add it as a piece of the course that gets shared. So, how are we going to do it? Yes, well, this is where it gets interesting, isn't it? Moodle code, our developers will be pulling it out and posting it within the Moodle community. Turns out this is a real pain in the butt. It's not, particularly when you've done a highly customized Moodle installation as we did. When we adopted Moodle, it was at version 1.5, and so it didn't have a lot of the features that it has now. So we modified not just the modules in Moodle, but the core as well. So we're now having to extract geez, I hope that's okay. Extract code and apply instructions to it for people on how to import it into their own Moodle instances. The training resources, much easier. We'll be posting them on a public Moodle site that we'll have at the institution. Same for the instructional multimedia. We just started working with DSpace at Royal Roads as an institutional repository. We have been struggling, like so many others, with the idea of a repository and what do we do with our stuff. We're thinking about trying DSpace for that, so we may direct people to our DSpace instance to get the multimedia resources. And courses, we'll host those on the Moodle site, and the pedagogy will be part of the courses. So yes, what we've learned so far. Thank you, BC Campus. Yeah, if you start talking about what you're doing, people will help you. This is a good lesson to learn. Very quickly, within the course that David taught, that John and I both took, we started having conversations about what I was doing. Then I started working with Paul, and they were both incredibly helpful around, you know, the kinds of things that would be of value to other people around what we were sharing. So that was great. I report directly to the CIO and AVP academic at Royal Roads. So essentially I was in his office one day and said, you know, we should really start sharing stuff. And he said, why? And I said, well, X, Y, and Z. He said, okay, see what you can do. So knowing who are going to be the people who are pliable to those kinds of ideas and getting them on board early on is a good way to go, I think. I also worked with our AVP research on our IP policy at Royal Roads to get a very clear understanding of what the rules were before I approached any faculty members about using their courses. We have an IP policy that enables us to use the content as long as we're not profiting for it for whatever purpose we want, regardless of whether a person developed it as an employee of the university or as a contractor. However, that said, I have no plans to share anybody's course that doesn't want their course shared. It's just, I don't want to go there. We've got plenty of people who will want to do that. And finally, as I said, sharing code isn't easy. And that was a big smack in the face. So we're working through that one, but it takes heavy resources. We did get the grant from BC Campus, but the project all told is probably going to cost the institution around $50,000, I think. And part of that will be developer time to pull things out. So because I can't do all of that, I can share the courses, I know how to do that, but I don't know anything about PHP code, so I need resources to do that. So, what we thought would be an interesting thing to talk about is the next steps. One of the things that I'm interested in, and given the conversation this morning in the keynote, I'm interested in how we develop this as something that people will, A, be able to know about easily, and B, that it's of value. So if I put up a Moodle course, how many of you are going to be able to use the Moodle course? Or will you just be copying content out of my course and into another format, and is that okay? And so that was sort of one of the things that we thought would be of value to discuss with you. And also sort of what do you think about where we are and where we should go next? So comments and questions about that?
Are your teachers using the SCORM standard for?
I think, you know, other teachers or other professors cutting and then creating their own thing is the only practical way, because everyone kits their content for their own perusal.
Yeah.
And, you know, we actually produce textbooks for K-12 completely free, but still people want to adapt it to their needs. So that's not going to change.
Yeah.
What we still need to learn at my institution is at a very foundational stage, and it's about getting that critical mass of buy-in from faculty.
Yeah.
Some faculty look at their intellectual property as an RRSP. This is going to make them rich when they sell it to, you know, later on.
Yeah.
And others look at the whole open idea as a conspiracy by management to steal their work and lay them off. So
just like distributed learning, right?
Yeah, and I just wonder if you have any pithy conversations.
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting. I think you and I were at the same BC Campus meeting a few months back. That was we were having a conversation about sharing. And somebody in the room who was a faculty member was concerned about sharing because of criticism from other faculty, because you're making yourself open, right? You're out there, this is my content. And my thinking around that was, so it's okay for your students to see your crappy stuff, but not your colleagues? And so there's that kind of conversation to be had about it, right? So there's maybe some academic thinking around showing people the kinds of work that you're doing, and maybe that's a convincing argument for some faculty to display their work as sort of like writing a paper, right? This is how good I am as an educator, here's my course. So that's maybe one argument. The pithiness, I don't know. I mean, our IP policy, as I say, I think has made it easier for us, and our institution is even smaller than CAP, and so we're able to be agile and do that kind of stuff. I think what John has said about champions is probably you need faculty who want to do this to talk to other faculty to convince them to do it, I think.
I think I have something to add.
Great.
Okay. One of the most convincing arguments I heard about getting teachers to share the materials that they develop for their own courses is that we've all heard stories about bloggers getting book deals, and
yeah.
it's you know, treating your learning materials as an iterative process and something that's to be refined and polished and displayed proudly is more likely to attract, you know, interest in that will result in, remuneration, I think. That's what I sort of,
Yeah.
I remember.
It's interesting, the idea that you were talking about earlier, John, about the idea of the academy and going back to the original idea of it instead of it being this profit building thing. And I agree, I think that that's, OER is taking us back to that to a degree. But it's an argument that needs to be pushed a bit, I think.
Well, the one business course that we happen to have up is an introduction to strategic management or strategic planning. And our instructor actually wrote a book, and it's got published by one of the publishers. So he can't put the text up, but he's got the right to do all his own slides, and he knows the methodology in and can construct new ones, and he's got them all up there for every one of his lectures. And he put it up there because he says, you know what? I look at my royalty check, and people are dreaming if they think writing a textbook's going to make you rich. And I remember the way the Rice Project got started. I attended a conference and someone told the story, you know, that, what's his name, Richard?
Richard Paranite.
Yeah, thank you, Richard.
Yeah.
I just remember Richard. Paul killed me. I don't remember his first name, but I remember Richard's. How could I do that? Anyway, Richard went into his dean and said, gee, I'd really like to write this thin book. I think it was in physics and I needed this particular twist to it. The dean said to him, you know what, there's 6 books out there, and yeah, they might not do exactly what you want, but why don't you think about a different way, because that's really not a good use of your time. He went away and thought about that, and then the Rice Project and the open objects, and that was what ended up coming out of him going back to the drawing board and rethinking. And so there's just so many stories out there that are good news stories that you hear at these conferences. And if there was a blog that did nothing but have the good news stories, not all the litany of here's the bandwidth problem and here's the IP problem, and I mean most of the blogs are all litanies. It would be nice to have one that was just the good news stories, because those are what capture people's imagination and get them involved.
Can you talk, oh, sorry.
We did start a little bit late, so we can go over a little bit.
Well, it's your lunchtime. You can use it any way you want.
Well, I just wanted to ask if you could talk for just a moment about how
free t-shirts.
about how you're doing your marketing. This question that you raised at the end about going beyond if you go
Yeah, we haven't started doing any of that at this point. However, one of the requirements of the grant that Mr. Campus gave us was for me to blog about it. So that's one thing we'll be doing. I'm also going to be working with the marketing unit on campus to get them involved. And actually, there has been a little bit of that kind of stuff with them already, talking to reporters from the Vancouver Sun and things like that. So I think we'll go with that route. But in addition, trying to be at places like this and talking about it.
Well, thanks,
Thanks, everybody.